and then Edoardo Crisafulli, who will then pass the mic to the ambassador of Italy in Ukraine. But we will start from Andrii Yassinovskyi, the Dean of Humanities of the Ukrainian Catholic University. Pan Andriu, the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. Buongiorno a tutti. Yesterday, on the 439th day of Russian aggression against Ukraine, the president of Ukraine, Alexander Zelensky, signed the decree on the celebration of the Day of Europe on May 9, finally together with the whole Europe. In his address yesterday morning, he emphasized that from now the Ukrainians will commemorate their historical unity, the unity of all Europeans who destroyed once Nazism and will defeat soon Russism. Our Italian friends probably knew about this intention of the Ukrainian president's office in advance. On the initiative of the Institute of Italian Culture in Kiev, now residing in Lviv, we started planning this event about a month ago. This is our second concrete project and definitely not the last. Our idea was quite simple and I dare to suppose productive enough. We just bring together 3 or 4 Ukrainian and Italian intellectuals just to talk about very important things, such as place of Ukraine in Europe. Is it visible or not enough visible by most Europeans? To what extent it is imaginary or real? What happened to Europe in 1989 and how these events 2 years later changed the history of Ukraine and Russia. We will finally trace what is the essence of despotism we feel personally from our neighbor and how its reasons were described in classical and Renaissance texts. I appreciate the Honorable Ambassador of Italian Republic for being with us. I am grateful for everybody who joined us today in this auditorium or online. My sincere congratulations to every panelist and to the moderator, of course. Buongiorno, grazie a tutti. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Pan Andriu. And this is our pleasure to invite to introductory words Edoardo Crisafulli. And Edoardo is the director of the Italian Institute of Culture in Kiev. So please, Edoardo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you so much for your wonderful introductory remarks. Pan, Andrii Yasinovsky, we're very proud. We're hosting with our ambassador, Pier Francesco Zazzo, who, in a sense, this initiative is the brainchild of our ambassador. We're very proud. This coincides with the words of your president, Mr. Zelensky. As I arrived in this country 2 years ago, 2 events which we organized with our wonderful Ukrainian partners reinforced the idea that Ukraine is deeply embedded in European history and culture. One of these events was the presentation of a classic of Italian historiography, the history of the idea of Europe by Chabot, translated for the first time into Ukrainian. And we presented this book on February the 22nd, 2022. Bear this date in mind, because all hell broke loose 2 days later. And we were talking about the European roots of Ukraine. All of the scholars here, whom I warmly welcome, from Italy and online and offline, know about this book. I will not get into any detail, but some of the themes are the basic ideas, values that characterize European identity, which is unity in diversity, because we have very, very diverse background, but at the same time, there's a common denominator. And some of these values are the rule of law, justice, individual freedom, tolerance, reason, rather than the fanaticism. Of course, we had bouts of fanaticism, of despotism, but we were able to fight off and get rid of these also intellectual malaise affecting our culture. But one of the ideas which I think should be uppermost in everybody's mind is whether Chabot's framework is actually simplistic or not, because not everybody agrees with Chabot, because Chabot thinks that European identity should be framed in terms of an opposition between the European and the non-European, which does not mean we have enemies. It means there are different nations, and this contrast should be brought to the fore. The other event was Dante in Ukraine, and I was really, really very glad we also presented Maxim Strichas. I think he has a special relationship to this university. His recent translation to Ukrainian, and I understood how Dante, a universal poet, not just Italian, is also part and parcel of your identity. And this was something also that reinforced in me the idea of our common heritage, our belonging to the same cultural koine, so to speak. Some of the issues I encountered in my work and living here, of course, we know about Ukraine. I mean, Ukraine is not alien to us, but living here, there's a few things that I focused on was the issues of language and identity, bilingualism, which can be problematic, and it has become very problematic, Russian-Ukrainian bilingualism, post-colonial discourse, the necessity of a narrative uniting your country, and the use of public history, because you're dealing with a very awkward, problematic past, and trauma is seared into the memories of most Ukrainians, trauma. So, by way of conclusion, the experience, which I think comes most closely in my mind, in a deeper connection with the Ukrainian experience of mine, is the Irish experience, where you had also an issue of language and identity, where also you had colonization and post-colonial discourse, where the Irish were more unfortunate because the Irish language was almost completely wiped out, where identity was denied, where an awful historical phenomenon happened, the famine. But the potato famine was not like Holodomor, because Holodomor was planned and willed. But still you have this trauma in the history. And the last concept is, which one of our greatest intellectuals always talked about, is the notion of cultural genocide. And I think this is very apt, a very apt concept to talk about Ukraine. You've been facing for many, many years, I would say possibly more than a century, even from Tsarist times, the issue of cultural genocide. Attempts to root out your identity, be it in a cultural, wider sense, cultural or linguistic. I once again extend my warmest thanks to all of you. I'm sure it's going to be a fruitful moment of discussion with experts from a variety of fields. And thank you again to the Catholic University for being such wonderful hosts. Thank you.
Thank you, Eduardo.
And Slava Ukraini.
Slava Ukraini. Thank you, Eduardo, for warm words and for the welcoming words. And then we have also the ambassador of Italy in Ukraine, Pier Francesco Zazo. Unfortunately, he is with us not physically, but online. Dear Francesco, the floor is yours.